Well, welcome everybody. My name is Steve Schmidt, and I'm a professor of adult education at East Carolina University, which is in Greenville, North Carolina in the United States. And I'm the host for this afternoon session. And I would like to welcome you to the session entitled Online Student-to-Student Interaction, Is It Feasible? And our presenter is Dr. Jenny Pange from the University of Ioannina, Greece. And Jenny, while I do your introduction, if you would want to share your screen with everybody.
Thank you.
And while you're doing that, I will say Dr. Pange is a professional in the field of information technology and applied mathematics with an emphasis on educational programs and director of the Laboratory of New Technologies and Distance Learning in the School of Education at the University of Ioannina, Greece. She studied mathematics at the University of Ioannina and statistics at LSE in the United Kingdom and holds a PhD from the University of Ioannina as well. She is Vice President of the Management Committee of the Center for Lifelong Learning at the University of Ioannina. And Professor Pange was a scientific coordinator and member of scientific committees of many EEC-funded programs. Her scientific research includes 4 books and more than 150 scientific publications in journals and conference proceedings. She has participated in several conferences nationally and internationally as a keynote speaker or invited speaker, and she has been a special session organizer in national and international conferences as well. So I welcome everybody, and I will turn this over to Dr. Pange.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I will share now my screen. Thank you and congratulations for that conference. I think it was a very nice idea to have that even online these days. We all know the importance of online learning. And now we have a system, as you can see. We have a system of students, of learning material, of teachers. So we have to see how all these factors interact in between them, and also how we can change the whole situation for the benefit of students and for the benefit of education. We have the materials, we have the ICT tools. What we have to do now is to consider how we can apply all these different methods to a feasible system. And I will start my presentation about online student-to-student interaction. I think this interaction is very important for the success of the online learning. Give me a minute. Yes. And the interactions in the learning process, as I said before, it's a systemic study. There are 3 main interactions. The student-to-teacher interaction, where we have the communication. Teachers deliver knowledge, so they think they are in a way to deliver the knowledge. And also teachers help students in the way of motivation of learning. They have in-class discussion, assignments, clarification of tactics, feedback, etc. So one process is student-to-teacher interaction. The other one is teacher-to-student, student-to-student interaction, where communication, again, is very important. We have the students who are now responsible for their own learning, and we have in class assignments, discussion exercises, open-ended questions, data exploration, writing common papers, etc. So we have all these processes among students, and that improves the student-to-student interaction. We also have student content interaction, and we have many different forms of content, and that interaction it follows different rules. It's a different way of interaction when we have face-to-face interaction. It is a different interaction when we have online material, and it's again different in a way, different interaction when we have the material in mobile, so that is a mobile learning. Up to now, what we know that online learning appears. It was used for many years in the past. We used that one, but now during COVID, we actually all moved to a new process, fully online learning. We know the teaching experiences, how we're in the face-to-face learning and how they are now in the online learning. And every time we see that technology appears either in the learning or in the teaching process, and also in the communication process. So technology appears everywhere, and now is more important. Students use technology either for synchronous or asynchronous communications. Our students and all students everywhere in the world know how to use synchronous or asynchronous communication, and they communicate with their teachers, with their peers for the learning process. How we apply ICTs for synchronous and asynchronous communication. In asynchronous, we have messages, blogs, discussion forums, emails. Students knew and how to use all these tools. And these days, they use again all these tools. In synchronous communication, they use online learning platforms, social media, etc. Some of the online learning platforms have not been designed in a way to upload all the learning material, but they have been designed mainly for communications. So we will see that many elements, different elements, have been used from different universities. Other universities, for example, have used the Skype for Business. Other universities have used Teams, others Zoom. Not all universities are using the same online platform. There are some advantages and disadvantages of using one platform or the other, and we've been discussing that one this morning in one presentation. And we find actually that not all, university and not all professors use the same platform. So learning during COVID, what is the learning, the importance of learning? What can we do actually in this learning process? We have we need from students to demonstrate their adaptability to that new normality. And we have to think one step ahead now. What about lifelong learning and recognition of prior experienced learning? Students have shown a good adaptability to this new learning procedure. Do we have to continue? What can I do? What can we do later on? The other thing is that students spend a considerable amount of time on the internet today, apart from working for their own online learning activities. How we can work in the way of teleworking, online learning, business, whatever. It's a different way of thinking. Students also used LMS for all courses. And what about the recognition, the assignments? Are all the online courses recognized? Could we share recognized courses from one department to the other, from one university to the other? It's another question. What about the assignments? Are all the assignments, all types of assignments for all group of students? It's another big question. And what can we do? What we can actually do in order to help students interact and learn also from using online material. The aim of the study was to present the students' view regarding the student-to-student interaction, especially during COVID-19 pandemic, and it focuses on how undergraduate students perceive the interaction among students in small online groups. In the University of Ioannina, we utilized the online platform of MS Teams because we had that platform. In that platform, many professors were familiar with that one. So we used the MS Teams. More than 300 students were attending courses, online lectures, online courses in our department. So we had a very big audience, and that was a problem. Sometimes when we have to discuss and talk different topics with students from different places, some of them did not have very good connection with the internet. It was actually a very big problem. And I was teaching to my students two different courses. One was ICT, Educational Applications for ICTs, and the other one was Statistics, Applied Statistics for Educators. I asked all my students to form small groups, from 7 up to 10 members in each group. We think that 7 students is okay to discuss and interact, and also 10 students in a group. It's also very good when they have to collect data, because it's a very big group in a way, but also it is a group that can work in a very good manner, and students can work together in a very good way. Students in these groups had to interact and share ideas, prepare final common PowerPoint presentation, and that was in a way for their assignments, their task. I mean, the teaching process was like project-based learning, and we had clear timetables, procedures, deadlines were given to students for every process, so it was quite good for them. And we had 2 self-selected groups of undergraduate students which participated in this study. The first group consisted of students attending the ICT course, and the second one from the statistics course. ICT course was taught in the 3rd year of undergraduate studies, and the statistics course was taught in the 2nd year of undergraduate studies. Unfortunately, students attending the statistics course had the problem that most of their time was, and the meetings with their students was online. They did not have the chance to interact with their peers, to interact with other students, and that was their big problem. Students had to prepare a project in the first group and in the second group. As I said before, it was project-based learning, and they were also free to use social media and other tools, online tools for cooperation. As I said before, it is very difficult to ask students to use only one tool or the other, to use sometimes Teams. Some of them were quite familiar with Skype or Google Hangouts or Viber. So we asked them in parallel in their own communication to use this kind of cooperation. I have to report here a few limitations of the study. The sample size, it was small in a way because it was a representative group from the whole Greece. It was only a group of students from the Department of Early Childhood Education at the University of Ioannina, and the gender of the participants, because most of the participants were women. The time of the survey was that just after COVID, during COVID, so the whole process was during COVID, and it was a self-selected process, so the group was self-selected. Students in the process had to rate the online cooperation, so they had on a Likert scale to form from 1 to 3, very good, good, and fair, how they found their cooperation, and then to choose from a list of advantages and disadvantages in the learning process and the cooperation, student-student cooperation, to report some advantages and disadvantages. And the students listed what they asked, what are their advantages and disadvantages. We mentioned the different papers, and also Keegan, as you know, that reports the student-to-student interaction, And so the students had to choose up to 3 main advantages or 3 main disadvantages to this online cooperation. So we took this as advantages and disadvantages as they appear here. The positive interdependence, as I said before, all these are reported from different authors and especially from Kigen. The positive interdependence, where each member of the group offers a unique contribution to all members. The individual accountability, each member of the group has achieved the group goal. The equal participation as a team members, and the simultaneous interaction, and the connection cooperation. These were either advantages or disadvantages for the students. All students were also asked if they had the face cooperation with their classmates before COVID-19, and how was that? And only students who were attending the ICT course replied yes and said, okay, we had that face-to-face cooperation before COVID, so it was quite easy for us to communicate now. And 73 of them, 69.5%, almost 70%, said it was very important in their current online teamwork, their cooperation before face-to-face cooperation, because they said they knew each other and they were able to discuss the project, and they knew how to split tasks in group because they did that before, and they overall they knew how to cooperate using ICT tools. Now let's see the results from the first group of students. These students were from the third year of undergraduate studies, and they said that the student-to-student interaction amongst the 3 members was very good during the course. They reported as main advantages equal participation, positive interdependence, simultaneous interaction, and individual accountability. And they considered as disadvantages technical difficulties. Of course, it was expected that some students had technical difficulties in joining internet and cooperating with other students. And also they used the Facebook for extra communication. That's what they reported. 31 students reported that student-to-student interaction was good. And the main advantages were the equal participation and the simultaneous interaction. And as disadvantages, they reported again technical problems, internet connection, use of mobiles instead of PCs. So it was quite difficult for them to write the report, and individual accountability for some students. 9 students, only 8.6%, said that the student-to-student interaction was fair, and they consider as main disadvantage technical difficulties, simultaneous interaction because they could not cooperate, they could not talk to each other, mainly due to technical difficulties, and they did not have equal participation. Let's see now the results from the second group. 40% of the students said that the interaction was very good. These students were attending the second year of their undergraduate studies, and main advantages were positive interdependence, individual accountability, and simultaneous interaction. The main disadvantages were the lack of equal participation and technical difficulties. They also reported that they used Facebook for extra communication because they all know how to use Facebook. In the second group again, 50% of students said it was fair, the interaction, it was good, the interaction, but the main advantages were the positive interdependence, individual accountability, but at disadvantages were the non-equal participation, technical problems, and poor online interaction. It was expected in a way because the technical problems overall sometimes create equal participation problems and online interaction. 15 students, 10% of them, said that it was fair because they were unable to join other members of their team. And they reported that they had problems in technical problems and also problematic internet connection and not available PCs or other mobiles. So working in teams, we found that makes each member valuable one because they had to interact, they had to account for the whole group, for the process, to give some effort in the project, and also to understand and get some feedback from other students. Increase the positive interdependence, increase the individual accountability, and so student-to-student interaction was in a way feasible. The other finding in our paper, in our research, was that in the first group, students reported that equal participation was the main advantage, one of the main advantages. And in the second group, where we had the students had never before a face-to-face cooperation, they reported that equal participation was disadvantaged. It was in a way expected because when students don't know each other, they don't know how to split the time, they don't know how to equally participate in a discussion. And some of them start to introduce themselves, others, they don't like to introduce themselves, others want to take more time in some project tasks, etc. So it appeared clearly that the equal participation was different in the first group with the students who had a cooperation before, and in the second one with the students without cooperation. And as conclusions, we can say that student-student interaction is an important factor for the educational success. I saw that also before happening during this conference when we were been attending another presentation, and when we finished the presentation we split into groups. So even now the teams and the group cooperation is very important, and the elder, more experienced students can support student-student interaction in online courses, and they have a better experience to face-to-face learning process. So a blended learning process appears to be the best process in a way. So there one process we can say we can apply in the future. And the role of teachers is very important because in the online process they have to change the behavior. They have to become managers in this behavior. They can offer quality feedback in online learning process. They simulate and support the whole learning process. So their support to the students is very important, and also their support to the process, either blended learning or online learning, is very important. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Dr. Pange. We do have a question here that was typed in. If anybody has questions, there is a question and answer function that you can add questions in, and I will note them. I'll note them here, and Dr. Pange can address them. The first one is, Trevor Laughlin asks, how much of an emotional connection was there between students? Did they feel they were part of a learning community? Did they learn from each other, or did they simply divide labor for projects?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. I've tried that many times. I did it in a different way. The first way I was split the groups randomly. So we asked students to form groups in a way that was very easy, and that was very helpful for students who had already attended the course. So for them, had a previous interaction, so for them it was good because they knew in a way each other, so it was very good for them. Sometimes in the second group of students who didn't know very well the other participants, it was quite difficult at the very beginning to split those randomly. They said, okay, we have to meet each other. So I gave to them more time in order to formulate concrete groups. Otherwise, it was quite difficult for me. But for students who had the face-to-face meeting before, for them, it is much easier, and it's quite better for them if we allow them to cooperate in the groups they have already formed. Long time ago, we have published a paper from the nearest neighbor learning. That is, students learn from the nearest neighbor, the one who is close to them. So when students know each other, for them it's a very good process if you allow them to formulate their own groups. If students don't know each other and it's their first time to cooperate, I think we have to give them more time and use the random process of allocation in groups.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, another question, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Santi Cabal Lobe says, thank you for your presentation. How did you evaluate the individual contribution to the project from each student in the group?
Oh, thank you for the question. What I did actually there, I asked the students to evaluate the participation, each one to have an Excel project and evaluate the participation of others. So they, at the end of the task, they were giving me their evaluations and how others have participated. This is one. And the second proof was that I asked the students to write common paper. So in this project, each student has put his or her own contribution to the paper. So for me, it was quite easy to evaluate the participation.
Okay, thank you. And Trevor has another question here. He says he may have missed this, but how much of this interaction among the students was synchronous versus asynchronous? Do you know?
Oh, yes. Most of the interaction was synchronous. Students like the synchronous communication. That's why they started using Facebook. When I was telling them, okay, the synchronous was only when they have to write the project. So they had to work on Google Docs, and that was the asynchronous. Someone was writing, and the next one was putting the ideas. But most of the work was synchronous because students need to communicate. That was my finding, that students, if they didn't use the Teams, Microsoft Teams, they used also Google Meets or Google Hangouts or Facebook. All the time was something like, let's talk, let's discuss this and that.
Okay, good, thank you. And another question, Trevor, you asked this earlier in the meeting. I'll go circle back to it. When you were just starting out your presentation, Dr. Pange, Trevor noted, are the interactions that you categorize informed by the COI model of online learning?
I did not hear very well your question. Sorry for the interruption. Let me read it. Is that written?
It's in the chat function.
Okay. Yes, I evaluated, yes, from each student of the group, yes. The individual contribution, because I had two ways of assessing that. One was that one way was from what other students said, and the other kind of evaluation was in the project where each one was offering his or her own contribution.
Okay, good. All right, we are right at 2 o'clock Eastern time, so and that's the end of our session. So thank you, Dr. Pange, for your interesting presentation. I certainly learned from it and appreciate it. Thank you very much.